in 2013 where infidelity rocked the core of the family. It's all on you, Teddy.
Y'all, what if the man the world already judged just stepped forward and shattered the entire narrative in one sentence? For weeks, the story looked finished. Teddy Campbell was labeled the villain. Tina Campbell was seen as the one betrayed. A clean, simple breakup story. Until it wasn't. But then, he spoke. Not to deny everything. Not to play innocent. He admitted just enough to sound real, and then dropped a line that flipped everything. I wasn't the only one. And just like that, the story cracked open. Because now this isn't just about cheating. This is about control, power, and what was allegedly happening behind closed doors. Teddy claims the relationship wasn't built on love anymore, but pressure, image, and money. I stayed quiet because I had to protect everything around us. But then another name starts surfacing, Warren Campbell. Not as background noise, but as a possible link that changes the entire equation. Allegedly, this wasn't a two-person breakdown. This was something layered, something hidden, something ongoing. And the deeper you look, the darker it gets. Because now people aren't just asking what happened, they're asking how long it was happening. What you saw wasn't the full story. And that's where it spirals. Clips resurface. Old moments feel different. The internet splits, and suddenly, this isn't closure. It's collision. So here's the question no one can answer yet. If both sides are telling parts of the truth, then what are they both still hiding?
I filtered everything through it. Everything. So when loneliness showed up in my marriage, I went back to the old Ted. That's exactly how it happened.
Y'all, what if this was never just a breakup, but a calculated collapse driven by money, control, and a truth no one wanted to say out loud? For weeks, the public story felt locked. Teddy Campbell was framed as the one who messed everything up. Tina Campbell stood in the spotlight as the one wronged. Clean narrative. Clear villain. Case closed. But then, he spoke. Not with denial. Not with panic, with control. He admitted the cheating. Owned it, and for a moment, it confirmed everything people believed. But then he added something that didn't fit. I wasn't the only one. And just like that, the story didn't continue, it flipped. Because now this isn't just about betrayal. This is about what he claims was happening behind the image. According to Teddy, allegedly, this wasn't love anymore. It was leverage.
I'm not gonna have my husband.
You're not gonna have me.
Like you don't always come to my stuff because
A relationship where decisions weren't emotional, they were strategic, where image mattered more than reality, where money quietly became the center of everything. He suggests Tina's behavior had shifted, not suddenly, but gradually, from partner to controller. I felt like I was being managed, not loved. That line alone changed how people started listening. Because now the question isn't just what he did, it's what he says was being done to him at the same time. And that's where the second fracture begins. Because another name enters the frame, Warren Campbell. Not loudly, not directly, but enough to raise questions. Teddy doesn't confirm. He implies. He suggests there was an unusual dynamic. A connection that blurred boundaries. A presence that made certain things make sense in hindsight. Allegedly, this wasn't just a marriage breaking. It was something more layered, more complicated, more interconnected than anyone expected. And once that possibility enters the conversation, everything changes.
is that hard? Is that a big ask?
No, normally, this is different. My artists are coming.
Because now people aren't just looking forward, they're looking back. Old interviews, old moments, old energy between people that once felt normal, now being reanalyzed under a completely different lens. Patterns start forming. According to what he's suggesting, this didn't begin with cheating. It began with imbalance. Power shifting, control tightening, trust eroding quietly over time. By the time it broke, it was already broken. And that's the part that hits hardest. Because if that's true, even partially, then the timeline everyone believes in is wrong. Which means every conclusion built on it starts to collapse. And then comes the part that makes this heavier. The money. Because Teddy allegedly claims something that doesn't sit cleanly, that despite Tina being more financially secure, there was still a constant pull toward more. More control, more access, more influence over what he had. And whether that's perception or reality, it changes how people interpret everything. Because now this isn't just emotional damage. It's financial tension layered into it. And once money enters a relationship breakdown, everything becomes more complicated and more calculated. Now the situation doesn't calm down after this. It escalates. Clips start circulating, statements get dissected, people pick sides. Some believe he's finally exposing what was hidden. Others say this is precision damage control, nothing more. But either way, the balance is gone. Because now there isn't one story. There are two. Both incomplete, both conflicting, both carrying just enough truth to feel real. And that's what makes this dangerous. Because when two narratives collide without resolution, the truth doesn't come out. It fractures. So now the real question isn't who cheated. It's this. If money, control, and hidden dynamics were always part of this, then what was this relationship really built on from the start?
In our relationship with where we are now, I think I just want to make sure that we're even intentional, even when we're working, just to kind of, just check.
Y'all, what if the moment he finally spoke wasn't the truth coming out, but the beginning of something even harder to untangle? Because what we're watching now isn't clarity, it's fragmentation. For weeks, the narrative felt stable. Teddy Campbell had already been judged. Tina Campbell had already been believed. One story, one direction, one conclusion. But then he disrupted it. Not by denying by reframing. He didn't erase what happened. He repositioned it. And that shift, it changed what people started paying attention to. Because now, instead of asking what he did, people started asking what was happening around it. But here's where it gets complicated. Because instead of simplifying the situation, his explanation added layers. According to what he's suggesting, allegedly, this wasn't a single moment of failure. It was a structure that had already been weakening long before anything became visible. A relationship still standing publicly, but internally, already fractured. What people saw wasn't what we were living.
I started doing the check-ins about 2008 because we didn't feel connected. If you don't connect, then...
That line didn't confirm anything, but it opened everything. Because now the timeline shifts. If things were already broken, then the cheating doesn't start the collapse. It reveals it. And that distinction changes everything. Because now blame isn't clean anymore. It's shared, or at least contested. But then he leans further. Not louder, just deeper. He suggests again, allegedly, that the dynamic between them had changed into something transactional. Not overnight, gradually. Where emotional connections started getting replaced by expectation, where decisions became influenced by control, by pressure, and by money. And once money enters the narrative, it stops being just emotional. It becomes strategic. I felt like everything I had was being watched. That statement doesn't prove anything, but it introduces tension that wasn't there before. Because now it's not just about love failing. It's about trust shifting into suspicion. And suspicion doesn't stay contained. It spreads. Which brings the story to its second rupture. Because once those claims started circulating, another name didn't just appear. It stayed. Warren Campbell. Not confirmed, not detailed, but repeatedly connected through implication. And that's what made it heavier. Because this isn't being presented as a clear accusation. It's being positioned as a missing piece. A factor that, if true, would explain why certain dynamics didn't make sense before. Allegedly, Teddy suggests there was a connection there that complicated boundaries. Not something loud, something subtle. Something that existed in the background long enough to become part of the pattern. And patterns are harder to dismiss than moments. Because moments can be explained, patterns require context. So now the audience starts looking backward. Old footage, old interviews, old interactions that once felt ordinary, now being re-examined through a different lens. There were things I ignored because I didn't want to break everything. That admission adds weight because it suggests awareness. Not full understanding, but enough to feel that something wasn't right. And when someone says they stayed silent while something fell off, it raises another question. What exactly were they protecting? The relationship, the image, or the reality they didn't want to confront? And that's where the story starts tightening. Because now we're not just dealing with events. We're dealing with perception. What was seen, what was hidden, and what is only now being suggested. But instead of resolving anything, this creates pressure. Because while one side is speaking in layers, the other side hasn't responded in the same way. And that imbalance, it creates space. Space where interpretation grows. Where assumptions start filling gaps. Where repetition begins to feel like confirmation. And that's exactly what's happening. Clips circulate, lines get isolated, statements get reframed. I wasn't the only one. I stayed quiet. I couldn't keep living like that. Each phrase gets repeated, not as explanation, but as evidence. And the more it repeats, the more it sticks. Until suddenly, the story doesn't belong to either side anymore. It belongs to the audience. And the audience isn't looking for accuracy. They're looking for alignment. Who makes more sense? Who feels more believable? Whose version explains more? That's what determines direction now. Not facts, but perception. And perception is unstable, because it shifts, fast. Which is why the situation doesn't slow down here. It escalates. More people weigh in, more theories form, more connections get drawn, whether they're confirmed or not. And once that process starts, it doesn't reverse. Because every new detail doesn't close the story. It expands it. And expansion without resolution leads to one outcome. Collision. Two narratives moving toward each other. Not to merge, but to clash. because neither side is stepping back. And neither side is saying everything, which creates the most dangerous version of any story. 2 incomplete truths. Because incomplete truth forces the public to complete it. And once the public starts doing that, control is gone. So now we're left in a space where nothing is fully confirmed, but everything feels possible. Where every past moment becomes potential evidence, and every silence becomes a question. And that leads to the only question that actually matters now. If what we're hearing is only what they're willing to say, then what are they still choosing not to reveal? And when those missing pieces finally surface, will they bring clarity? Or prove that this was never just a breakup, but a story built on things that were never meant to be seen? And just when it feels like the story can't get any more intense, this is exactly where everything becomes dangerous. Because what we're watching now isn't closure, it's pressure building with no release. 2 narratives, 2 voices, 2 completely different versions of the same relationship, and neither one is backing down. Teddy Campbell has already disrupted the narrative, admitting enough to sound real while introducing claims that shift the weight of blame. Meanwhile, Tina Campbell set the tone first, and that version still holds power. And now, the audience is stuck in the middle, trying to decide what feels true. Because this doesn't look like a clear lie anymore. It looks like 2 incomplete truths colliding in real time. And that's where it turns explosive. Because incomplete truth forces the public to fill in the gaps, and once that happens, the story stops belonging to the people involved. It becomes bigger, louder, uncontrollable. Add the growing speculation around Warren Campbell, and suddenly, this isn't just a broken marriage, it's a web of connections that keeps pulling everything deeper. Reputations are now on the line. Years of history are being re-examined. Every silence is starting to sound like a statement. And the longer this goes unanswered, the more permanent these narratives become. Because in situations like this, it's not always the truth that wins. It's the version people believe first. So now the question isn't who spoke, it's who held back. And when the full story finally surfaces, because it always does, who's going to survive it?